Inside a dimly lit room, pencils scratched across paper as codebreakers converted intercepted Japanese messages into English. One transmission caught their attention, a message from submarine I-16, a scheduled rice delivery to Buin, southern Bougainville. Departure imminent. Lieutenant Commander Robert Williamson set down his coffee and picked up the secure line. 3 destroyer escorts were alerted: USS England, USS George and USS Raby. None of them knew that this single, decoded message would spark one of the most effective anti-submarine operations in naval history. The Pacific War had taught U.S. forces that Japanese submarines were not just weapons. They were supply arteries. Destroy them, and isolated garrisons would wither. The Imperial Japanese Navy's 7th Submarine Squadron had set up a patrol line stretching from Truk Island to the Admiralty Islands. I-16, RO-104, RO-105, RO-6, RO-8, RO-16, and RO-117, Admiral Somu Toyoda's underwater sentinels, ready to detect any American fleet moving toward Palau or the Marianas. The USS England moved swiftly through Pacific swells at 23 knots. Her Buckley-class hull displaced 2,400 tons of seawater. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton studied the tactical chart. His ship carried 186 men and an arsenal built for submarine hunting. 2 depth charge racks, 8 K-guns launching 300-pound charges, and the weapon that would change naval warfare: a 24-barrel Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar. The Hedgehog was British ingenuity at its most lethal. Unlike depth charges, which detonated at set depths, Hedgehog projectiles exploded only on contact. Each of the 24 spigots fired a 65-pound bomb carrying 35 pounds of Torpex explosive. The results spoke for themselves. While traditional depth charges hit 1 in 80 attacks, the Hedgehog achieved a kill once every 5 attempts. Executive Officer John Williamson knew these numbers by heart. A Cambridge graduate with a head for physics and trigonometry, he understood that submarine warfare was a game of geometry. Sound waves traveled through water at 4,800 feet per second, and the difference between a hit and a miss came down to degrees, seconds, and precision. Aboard submarine I-16, Lieutenant Commander Teiuchi Yoshitaka checked his manifest. 75-pound rubber bags filled with rice. He knew from 9 previous patrols that supply runs were among the most dangerous missions. Surface ships drew aircraft. Submarines drew destroyers armed with ever-advancing sonar. I-16 displaced 2,180 tons submerged, powered by diesel engines on the surface and electric motors underwater. Her 94-man crew had endured depth charges, aircraft attacks, and close brushes with Allied submarines. But like all diesel-electric boats, I-16's greatest vulnerability remained its need to surface to recharge batteries and refresh air. The 3 American ships advanced in a line abreast formation, USS George on the left, USS Raby on the right, and USS England in the center. Each used SG surface radar and QC sonar. Sonar operators rotated every 15 minutes, straining to distinguish whales, schools of fish, or the telltale metallic echo of a submarine. Sonarman First Class David Chun had tracked contacts for 18 months across the Pacific. His hands moved instinctively as he rotated the transducer. Pause, ping, listen for the echo. Conditions were perfect. Calm water, minimal temperature layers, no thermal interference. At 13:35 on May 19th, Chun's headphones came alive with the unmistakable sound of a submarine. Range 2,000 yards, bearing 090 degrees. He hit the alarm and called the bridge. Positive submarine contact, bearing 090, range 2,000. On I-16's bridge, the hydrophone operator reported the American sonar ping. Yoshitaka ordered an emergency dive. Air hissed from the ballast tanks as seawater flooded in. 45 seconds to periscope depth. 2 minutes and 15 seconds to 100 feet. Executive Officer Williamson plotted the attack geometry. Estimated target speed: 8 knots, course southwest toward Bougainville. Depth between 100 and 200 feet. Hedgehog effective range 270 yards. The first salvo fired at 13:41. 24 projectiles spread over a 40-yard area. They sank silently. No detonations. A clean miss. Williamson adjusted his figures. The submarine had likely gone deeper, hiding beneath a thermal layer around 150 feet. The second attack at 13:58 scored a hit. One muffled explosion. Damage, but not destruction. Through sonar, Williamson could hear grinding metal, machinery crippled, but the submarine still alive. The third attack at 14:10 failed. The submarine had dropped to 325 feet, well below estimates. Yoshitaka was skilled, using every advantage the ocean offered. The fourth strike missed again when I-16 sharply changed course. The Japanese hydrophone crew had learned to count seconds between sonar pings, predicting when the Americans would fire. At 14:33, Williamson recalculated. Target bearing 170 degrees, range 400 yards, depth 250 feet. He ordered the fifth Hedgehog attack. 4 to 6 projectiles struck I-16's pressure hull. The explosion lifted the England's stern clear of the sea. Men were thrown off their feet. Inside I-16, seawater burst through ruptured plates. Emergency lights flickered out. The submarine angled downward, toward the ocean floor 3 miles below. 20 minutes later, debris surfaced. Life preservers with Japanese writing, planks of wood, and oil slicks spreading across the Pacific. I-16 and her 94-man crew were gone, but the work wasn't finished. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific had cracked another message. On May 20th, cryptographers decoded the position of the entire 7th Submarine Squadron. 7 boats forming a patrol line across a route Admiral William Halsey's fleet had used twice before. RO-104, RO-1P-6, RO-8, RO-9, RO-12, and RO-116. Admiral Toyoda's plan was sound. Place submarines at choke points, forcing the enemy to risk attacks or take longer detours. He believed the Americans could detect single submarines, but not eliminate an entire squadron before it moved. Commander Hamilton Haynes of Escort, Division 39 was ordered to sweep the line from west to east, 3 destroyer escorts against 7 submarines. On paper, the odds favored Japan, but numbers couldn't account for the U.S. Navy's superior sonar, radar, and the Hedgehog's precision. At 0350 on May 22nd, USS George detected RO-106 on radar, a surfaced submarine 8 miles away. The Japanese vessel had surfaced to charge batteries, an unavoidable but risky move. Searchlights confirmed the contact, and George's 5-inch guns swung to fire. RO-106 crash-dived in 38 seconds, too late. The Americans knew her position. At 0415, USS George launched Hedgehogs, but missed when the submarine evaded at 200 feet. Moments later, USS England reacquired sonar contact at 0425. The hunt was far from over. Williamson had refined his attack strategy based on lessons learned from the I-16 engagement. He now calculated target depth by analyzing sonar propagation time, factoring in the submarine's likely evasion speed, and turning radius to predict its position 60 seconds after initial contact. The first Hedgehog attack missed, but the second, launched at 0501, scored at least 3 direct hits. The underwater explosion sent a massive column of water and debris rising to the surface. RO-106's pressure hull was ruptured in multiple sections, and its emergency ballast system failed. The submarine sank stern first with all 59 crew lost. Within 4 days, 2 submarines had been destroyed. Japanese naval intelligence monitoring radio signals quickly recognized a disturbing pattern. American anti-submarine forces were systematically targeting the 7th Submarine Squadron using new, previously unknown tactics and advanced weapons. Urgent messages were sent to the remaining submarines, ordering strict radio silence and forbidding surface operations except in critical emergencies. The Americans, however, had the upper hand. Their radar could detect submarines over 10 miles away, and their sonar systems were refined enough to track targets through complex thermal layers and ocean currents. Most crucially, the Hedgehog mortar had eliminated the weaknesses of conventional depth charges. Traditional depth charge attacks required ships to pass directly over the target, momentarily losing sonar contact and giving submarines a chance to escape. The resulting underwater turbulence also blocked sonar signals for up to 15 minutes, delaying follow-up attacks. The Hedgehog changed everything. It allowed ships to fire ahead while maintaining sonar contact. Missed attacks created no noise interference, enabling immediate re-engagement. Since the Hedgehog only detonated upon impact, it eliminated false damage readings and confusion caused by premature explosions. RO-104 became the third target of the American hunter-killer group. At 6:10 on May 23rd, the USS Raby detected the submarine running on the surface about 250 nautical miles northwest of New Ireland. RO-104's radar warning system worked correctly, and it submerged within 45 seconds. However, that was enough time for US fire control to lock onto its course speed and dive point with mathematical precision. Between 06:17 and 07:15, the USS Raby made 4 Hedgehog attacks, all unsuccessful as the submarine's commander employed every known evasive tactic. The Japanese attempted to jam sonar using bursts of tuned sound impulses, which offered limited masking of their acoustic profile. They performed unpredictable course changes, shifted depth from 50 to 300 feet, and released compressed air to create false sonar echoes, all techniques honed through years of Pacific warfare. At 07:17, the USS George joined the battle, launching 5 consecutive Hedgehog salvos, all misses. RO-104's commander demonstrated remarkable skill, using ocean currents and temperature shifts to conceal his position. He manipulated ballast tanks to change depth silently, kept propeller noise minimal, and steered sharply to avoid detection. By 08:19, Executive Officer Williamson began his final calculations. RO-104 had been evading for over 2 hours, draining its battery and air reserves. The submarine would soon have to reduce maneuvering to conserve power. Williamson predicted its next likely position and ordered another attack. At 08:34, the USS England fired 24 Hedgehog projectiles. 10 to 12 struck RO-104's pressure hull. As seawater flooded the engine and battery rooms, an enormous underwater explosion followed 3 minutes later. Debris and oil surfaced by 10:45. All 58 crew members were lost. 3 submarines destroyed in 5 days. Statistically, such success using depth charges was nearly impossible. Early war kill rates were just 3%, rising to 30% by 1945. The Hedgehog's 20% success rate marked a 6-fold improvement in effectiveness, but numbers told only half the story. The psychological toll on Japanese crews was severe. Intercepted communications showed growing panic. Commanders requested permission to abandon patrols, fearing the new American superweapon that seemed to hit with impossible accuracy. RO-116 was on routine patrol when USS George detected it at 01:20 on May 24th. Radar contact 8 miles away. Surface target moving at 12 knots. The Japanese commander had prioritized speed over stealth, a fatal miscalculation. USS England acquired sonar contact at 01:50 as the submarine crash-dived. Within minutes, Williamson's refined attack model, based on prior enemy tactics, was in play. At 02:14, the Hedgehog salvo struck home, scoring 3 to 5 direct hits. Unlike previous encounters, there was no massive secondary explosion. Newer submarines had improved damage control systems, but multiple hull breaches doomed RO-116. Flooding overwhelmed the engine room, propeller bearings failed, and internal bulkheads collapsed under pressure. For 20 minutes, sonar operators heard the sounds of the submarine breaking apart before it disappeared, taking all 56 men with it. 4 submarines destroyed in 6 days. The USS England's unprecedented streak caught the attention of senior U.S. Navy Command. Admiral Chester Nimitz requested a full after-action report on the England's methods and weapon performance. Admiral Ernest King ordered plans to retrofit other destroyer escorts with Hedgehog systems, yet the hunt wasn't over. 3 submarines from the 7th Squadron were still active. Japanese naval intelligence, realizing the scale of their losses, ordered remaining vessels to regroup for mutual defense. On May 26th, the escort carrier USS Hoggett Bay and 4 Fletcher-class destroyers arrived to relieve the exhausted England. George and Raby, the 3 destroyer escorts, had been operating continuously for 8 days, low on fuel and ammunition. Normally they would have returned to port, but Commander Haynes requested permission for one final sweep before heading to Manus for resupply. Intelligence intercepts suggested RO-108 was nearby, possibly attempting to rendezvous with other submarines for retreat. At 23:04 on May 26th, USS England detected RO-108 by sonar 1,500 yards away, moving southeast at 8 knots. The submarine was running shallow to conserve power while maintaining speed. Within 3 minutes, Williamson completed his targeting calculations. Estimated depth 120 feet. Course steady. The commander of RO-108 was either unaware of pursuit or hoping to outrun it. At 23:23, the USS England launched a full Hedgehog attack. Multiple projectiles struck home, producing a massive underwater explosion that illuminated the sea with glowing debris and phosphorescent bubbles. Lights from the submarine's battery compartments flickered beneath the waves before fading completely. 5 submarines destroyed in 8 days. The most successful anti-submarine operation in naval history. Only one remained, RO-105. Commanded by Lieutenant Junichi Inoue, with Captain Ryusaku, commander of Submarine Division 51, aboard as a passenger. Built at Sasebo Naval Arsenal and commissioned in late 1943, RO-105's crew had survived several close encounters with American forces. In August 1943, it narrowly dodged torpedoes fired by USS Tarpon. A month later, it attacked USS Columbia but missed. The crew had also rescued downed Japanese pilots near the Solomon Islands and New Guinea. Their experience made RO-105 the most dangerous opponent left. Japanese intelligence intercepted American transmissions revealing the England's position. Orders were sent for RO-105 to avoid combat and retreat to Truk for refit. But limited fuel and battery capacity made this nearly impossible without surfacing through aircraft-patrolled zones. The submarine crash-dived immediately, but its position and course were already known to the American fire control teams. What followed was a 25-hour standoff that tested both sides to their limits. Throughout the night, USS George launched repeated Hedgehog attacks, missing each time as the submarine's evasive maneuvers became increasingly unpredictable. Emergency turns every few minutes, depth shifts between 60 and 300 feet, and silent running at minimal propeller speed, all were part of RO-105's relentless attempt to survive. The crew also released bursts of compressed air to produce false sonar targets, confusing American sensors. By dawn on May 30th, both USS George and USS Raby had exhausted most of their Hedgehog ammunition without success. RO-105's commander had displayed remarkable skill, using every technique available to avoid destruction, manipulating ballast tanks to alter trim angle, controlling propeller cavitation with precision, and deploying acoustic decoys at critical moments. Initially, Commander Haynes had kept USS England in reserve, while George and Raby carried out the main assault, following standard naval doctrine that preserved the most successful ship for future missions. But after 24 hours of failed attacks, he gave the order that would cement the England's place in history. "Oh hell, go ahead, England." At 07:36 on May 30th, authorization for the final attack was transmitted. Executive Officer Williamson, who had been analyzing the battle, calculated the optimal firing parameters based on the submarine's observed evasion. Estimated depth 200 feet. Course, southwest toward Bougainville. Speed reduced to save battery power. The England's Hedgehog salvo at 07:36 scored 6 to 10 direct hits on RO-105's pressure hull. A powerful explosion followed minutes later as the submarine's air systems ruptured and seawater flooded all compartments. Oil and debris soon surfaced, confirming the destruction of the 7th Submarine Squadron. Among the 55 men lost was Captain Ryusaku Yanagimoto, one of Japan's most experienced submarine commanders. His death meant not only the loss of individual expertise, but also of institutional knowledge, built through years of Pacific combat. 6 submarines destroyed in 12 days, an achievement unmatched in the history of anti-submarine warfare. Admiral Ernest King later fulfilled his promise that there will always be an England in the U.S. Navy by commissioning the guided missile destroyer USS England in 1960, preserving both the name and legacy. Yet the impact of these events went far beyond individual valor. The annihilation of the 7th Submarine Squadron marked a decisive turning point in the Pacific. War Admiral Toyoda's planned Operation Ago, a decisive strike against overseas carriers, was compromised before it began. Deprived of submarine reconnaissance, Japanese naval intelligence was effectively blind. The technological lessons were equally profound. Between 1941 and 1945, American industry produced more than 620,000 depth charges, an enormous investment in conventional weapons. However, the Hedgehog's performance proved that precision outweighed volume. British wartime records had shown one submarine sunk per 60 depth charge attacks. The Hedgehog achieved 1 kill per 6 attacks, a tenfold improvement. Combined with radar and sonar advancements, it revolutionized anti-submarine warfare. Psychologically, the impact was devastating. Japanese crews who once trusted their ability to evade now faced weapons of almost surgical accuracy. Intercepted reports revealed growing hesitation among commanders to confront American surface ships. Admiral Toyoda's response was immediate. He altered Operation Ago to remove reliance on submarines, shifting to surface ships and aircraft for reconnaissance, resources Japan could barely afford as the war neared its end. The England's success also underscored the critical role of signals intelligence. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific had intercepted and decoded Japanese communications, providing the targeting data that made the entire operation possible. Without this intelligence on the I-16 supply mission and the patrol zones of the 7th Squadron, the U.S. ships would have been searching aimlessly across the Pacific. Equally vital was Williamson's scientific approach to warfare. His method, calculating target depth, course, and speed from sonar data and observed maneuvers, transformed submarine hunting from intuition into a precise science. Post-war studies showed his model was soon adopted fleet-wide, dramatically increasing U.S. anti-submarine effectiveness. But the human cost was sobering. Around 400 Japanese submariners died in those 12 days, representing not only tragic loss of life, but also irreplaceable combat experience. Each crew required months of training and years at sea to achieve full proficiency. American casualties during the same period were zero. Not a single man aboard England, George or Raby was killed or injured. The contrast revealed not only superior technology, but also better training, tactics, and leadership at every level. For Japan, the consequences were catastrophic. The Imperial Navy began the war with 63 fleet submarines. By May 1944, fewer than 30 remained operational. Losing 7 more in less than 2 weeks was unsustainable. Japanese shipyards produced barely 1 new submarine per month, while U.S. forces were destroying them at several times that rate. The outcome was inevitable. Japan's submarine arm would vanish long before it could significantly threaten U.S. naval power. Technology sealed this fate. American radar could detect surfaced submarines up to 15 miles away. Japanese vessels, needing to surface for air and battery recharging, became easy targets. Improved sonar erased many of the advantages submarines once held. Early war sonar lost contact during attacks, but the England's QC model maintained continuous tracking, providing live targeting data for Hedgehog salvos. Unlike depth charges, which detonated at preset depths and disrupted sonar readings, Hedgehog rounds exploded only on direct impact, allowing rapid follow-up strikes. By war's end, U.S. industry had produced over 600,000 depth charges and thousands of Hedgehog projectiles, K-gun launchers, and fire control systems, reflecting America's industrial dedication to anti-submarine warfare. Training programs mirrored this scale. Thousands of sonar operators and ASW specialists graduated from U.S. naval schools, numbers Japan could never match. Experience gained in Atlantic convoy defense quickly transferred to the Pacific, accelerating tactical progress. The USS England's success represented the fusion of technology, intelligence, mathematics, and human skill, signals interception, radar and sonar precision, advanced weaponry, and disciplined execution, supported by unmatched industrial power. By mid-1944, Japanese submarines were reduced to desperate supply runs and token patrols. Their offensive threat, once formidable, had been neutralized by technological evolution. Although the England continued to serve throughout the war, she never again achieved the concentrated success of those 12 days in May 1944. Her name became synonymous with excellence in anti-submarine warfare, marking a transformation from a contest of stealth to one of science and precision. The impact lasted for decades. Every major navy studied the England's tactics and adopted similar technologies, ending the era when submarines could strike undetected. Admiral Toyoda's Operation Ago, executed without submarine intelligence, led directly to Japan's defeat at the Battle of the Philippine Sea. With submarine threats removed, U.S. carriers gained unprecedented freedom of movement across the Pacific. Williamson's mathematically driven strategy became a landmark in military history, a shift from intuition to data-driven precision. The USS England had not merely sunk 6 submarines, she had proven that victory in modern warfare depends on superior technology, training, and production. In the depths of the Pacific, 7 Japanese submarines still rest, their crews honored by both sides for their courage. Yet their loss marked the end of an era when skill alone could overcome technological inferiority. The future of naval warfare belonged to those who mastered science and built ships like the USS England.